Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive. This is episode 158, and I am recording it at 8:02 p.m. on Sunday evening, November 26, 2023. So you can tell that I have just finished enjoying Thanksgiving. And this is my warm thanks episode because really I'm just grateful to everybody right now. I've had the nicest 4 days. I'm feeling so much more rested and better. And you will be hearing this probably around December 1st or 2nd, but I just wanted to extend my warmest thanks to you, my listeners, because I really wasn't sure that we'd be able to drum up enough people to do a cognitive fiber retreat. And also, most of you have been incredibly supportive. But listen, even if you're not contacting or writing on the blogs or anything like that, if you're just listening, I deeply, deeply appreciate this. I am warm and comfortable and feeling outrageously thankful right now because we are in that halcyon time between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which, remember, if you were in Norway, the time between Christmas and New Year's, which I have off, by the way, would be Romule. So what is this time between Thanksgiving in America and Christmas? Why, it's Black Friday. Yes. And someone pointed out to me recently, I think it might have been Caroline actually over in Somersetshire, said, that means nothing to us Brits. And no, because in Britain, they do this insanely wonderful thing, the January sales. After Christmas, January is like a madhouse of really good sales, or at least it was when I lived there in the 1980s. Nonetheless, if you're a Yank, we've got this confusing series of things that happens right now. We have Black Friday, which used to be the day after Thanksgiving and used to result in mob scenes in places like Los Angeles and Philadelphia, two of my favorite places for violence where I happen to have lived. At any rate, so Black Friday was the day after Thanksgiving, but now Black Friday seems to have started the day after Halloween, which used to be All Saints' Day, or Dia de los Muertos, depending on which side of the border you are in my home state, California. But now apparently it's Black Friday too. And then we had, after Black Friday, we had Small Business Saturday, which should have been yesterday, 2 days after Thanksgiving. But Small Business Saturday kind of crashed and burned, and it began, about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. And at the same time, quite realistically, you have to be real that small businesses, particularly independent dyers, independent crafters and makers, can't really afford to do huge discounts, that they're operating at a real bare bones minimum level most of the time. Some of them really rise to great fame and success. They really get a process down and make good money, but most of them are really struggling just to get by. So here on the day after Small Business Saturday, please remember, while you're going out there and snapping up all the bargains, if you're in the United States, please, please, please go over to the indies at their websites or on Etsy or wherever you're shopping from them. Please give them some love because there's only so many things you can buy on Amazon, and frankly, they're kind of cold-hearted and manufactured nonetheless. So Small Business Saturday comes next. Sunday, I think we're all just taking deep breaths today. And then, tomorrow is Cyber Monday, which I think means you just resubscribe to the Disney Channel or Netflix and get on with your life. They usually offer, in America, really good discounts. So I'm in this festival of giving. Ironically, I think I have finished all my holiday shopping. So maybe this is a good time. It's just awfully confusing here in the U.S. Which reminds me to say, I've forgotten that this Tuesday is also Giving Tuesday. Because after you've blown all your money and all this other stuff, you really should give to a charity. Oh, and what is Wednesday? Wednesday is the third day back to work after Thanksgiving, if you're me. At any rate, here we are in this festive and confusing season, and my warm thanks to all you, my listeners, to the people who came to CFR, whether you were or were not listeners. I also want to give a thumbs up to Christina of Cutiful Yarns on Etsy. I have the link in the show notes. I think I've had it at the end of the show notes for a while now, but I've also moved it up under the warm thanks section. Christina would like you to know that she is restocking her Etsy shop. I noticed there was DK on it. I just did a quick glance over there. Go look at her stuff, because I am knitting my socks out of her sock yarn, and I just love her colorways. Love, love, lovity, love, love, love. All right. Meanwhile, this would, of course, lead many of you to say, but what of the Cognitive Fiber Retreat 10 in 2024? Well, the link for all the information we have is right there in the show notes, and it will take you to the information thread on Ravelry. We have some discussions there about how to improve it. We are very, very much in the planning stage. Now, usually at this time of year, we would have had the Sunday debriefing meeting where we would have planned what we're doing pretty much class to class. But we really didn't do that this time around. We have some very interesting suggestions. Some of the people were saying, well, as new people, they felt a little left out. And someone said, well, let's do a mixer of just the new people. No, we can't do that for a very simple reason. We never exclude people at CFR, never. So we can't exclude all the regulars saying the new people get a special time and regulars can go dance among yourselves. I think the more valuable thing to take away from that suggestion is, in the very beginning, we may need a more organized kind of mixer for everybody just to meet and hang out. And I'm hoping that will be called Friday night. Okay, but anyway, this is all under discussion. We don't have anything hard and fast. And it is important to me that people who have never done a CFR before, we do want to help you mix in. I did like somebody's suggestion was, I'm an experienced person, I can attach myself to a newbie. I think that's a wonderful idea, to be honest, and that may be the direction I go, is say, come on, experienced people, please attach yourself to a newbie and introduce them around and make sure they know the story. It's also odd for me to even discuss this, because usually at a CFR, I mean to be the social butterfly that I never have been, but I think many of you think I am. Actually, what's going on is I'm trying to keep the whole show on the road and be available, and things always happen. Although I must say they're getting better as the years go on. So I do miss out on a certain part of this, and this aspect is one of them. Like trying to make sure all the new people who've never been to one are integrated has been a little outside my ken. So I do want to address that. But again, we're not going to say, well, here is the special party for the new people, because I just think that's too exclusive. I think we're insulting or excluding the older people who've been there. I think we want to try to mix. I don't think we want to have the group of the veterans versus the group of the new people. I think we really want to integrate the group. And of course, I'm always going to say this, you just have to jump in. That you have to realize this is very, very informal, and there was certainly a lack of organization in some ways, that Saturday is the day of the retreat. And as you move through these things, you get more familiar with the flow of how Friday and Sunday also work. But I hope everybody's coming back next year. I know not everybody can, but anyway, please put your ideas over on the information thread, because this is an important issue, and I want the important issues out there so we can look at the best way to address them. Having said all that, you're all saying, but Gemma, what is on your hooks and needles? Well, I totally lost control this week because I had 4 days off. What did you expect? First off, I have finished the first blueberry waffle sock in the deep forest. That is the sock in the yarn that I got through Careful Trading at the Cognitive Fiber Retreat 23. That is Cuticle Christina's incredibly beautiful colorway, Deep Forest. And I'm just using a blueberry waffle sock pattern, hence the name. You can see in that picture that I've got the waste yarn in for the Afterthought heel. As we speak, I am about halfway through the Afterthought heel. So that sock is, for all intents and purposes, finished, and I will be getting on to the second sock probably tomorrow. In the meantime, what's in progress? Well, the stash toss remains frozen, 38 skeins versus 80 out, but there is a lot of hope for improving that. First off, I meant over these 4 days off to plan the Romule sweater, to just go through and pull the yarn. And you can see the 4 pictures that happened when I did exactly that. They're in slightly skewed order. First of all, on the second picture there, or if you have them 2 side by side, it's the second picture on the top row. You can see all the yarn I pulled out. And I pulled out grays and blues and greens, not many blues and greens, not as many grays, but primarily creams and browns. And it began to take on a life of its own as a very neutral sort of sweater. And then I began to consider, how thick do I want the yarn of this sweater to be? Now, I have been using the brick sweater pattern to make these in the past. The brick is a really nice template for anything else you want to do, including some experimental color work, as you may remember from previous ideations of the Romule sweater. So I went to the brick and I said, well, the thing is, a lot of these yarns are fairly thick. And I found the lightest yarn I had was this huge amount of pure alpaca from my herd, namely from Rashida, our Snow White alpaca, the late lamented Rashida, who was at one time the leader of the alpaca herd. And I wanted to use the Rashida yarn, but I wanted a little more bounce and stretch, so I found myself mixing it with a skein from Noro that is Silk Garden, and it is in a semi-solid cream, which is a little unusual because Noro tends to stripe, but this stuff really is more of a semi-solid cream. So I love the combination, but that makes for a bulky weight yarn. And then I thought, well, I've got neutrals, I've got brown and white primarily, and I thought, that's Petite Knitter. That's the kind of pattern she does. And I went looking on Ravelry for a simple, bulky sweater because, again, I will be playing with color work and who knows what. So I began to eliminate things from my stash. So in the second picture, you see the original everything I got that I was willing to knit through as spares, and a lot of that is hand spun, as you can tell. If you go to the fourth picture, you will see that I have weeded it down to some purple-brown mixes at the very top, and then it's white and cream and naturals going down through browns into one skein of very dark brown that is almost black. I think I have too much yarn in there, but you never quite know. And I went hunting on the internet, and I indeed found a pattern by Petite Knitter, and she's in Antarctica somewhere. I think she might be in Svalbard up in Norway. At any rate, she has what's called the Novice sweater, and it's a bulky weight sweater. I was very attracted to this because it has a folded collar at the top, and it's top down from the folded collar right down through the arms and the body to the bottom, which is pretty much how I wanted to knit this. And you can see in picture number 4 that I've organized the colors in what I was thinking of as a sort of blended color block. But I don't think so now. I'm debating just doing lots of minor puries, starting with a light background and heading into darker background with lighter stuff in it. Anyway, we will see how that works. But I did sit down and say, well, I know what's first, and it's that blend of Rashida the alpaca from our herd with one of the skeins of the semi-solid cream from Noro. And so you can see there, I did the whole folded collar. Now, there's one little problem with this pattern, and it's a very minor problem. In the pattern, she uses 6mm, which is a US 10, and 7mm needles. There is no US 7mm needle. There is a 10.5, which is, I believe, a 6.5mm. It might be a 6.75. So I looked at the needles she uses, and she mentions, the Petite Knitter that is, that she's using ChiaoGoo's. Oh, Suzanne, where are you when I need you? At any rate, I said, okay, so ChiaoGoo has these needles. Well, I went looking at every other option. Now, my needles of choice are ChiaoGoo with Addi turbos as a almost equal. I like them both a great deal. And my collection of them has varied a lot over the years, depending on who had what of my favorite vendors. So I went hunting around on the internet, and I did eventually find the only 7mm I was going to get were going to be ChiaoGus, and of all places, they were on Amazon. I did check a lot of LYS dealers and a lot of my favorite providers online, and they didn't have 7mm. They had everything but. And on Amazon, they call the 7mm US 10.75, which, nope, never heard of. And they had 7 pairs left, and I ordered 3 pairs. Why 3 pairs? That is 3 sets of circular needles. Why? Because when I do this type of sweater, I'm going to have live needles on the body and on the arms, because I knit the whole thing top down so that I can use all the colors equally. I don't want the sleeves to be different colors than the body. If I have a stripe across the body in dark brown, I want a stripe correspondingly across the sleeves in dark brown. So that set me back a bit of money, let me tell you, but I now have a needle that my buddy the Petite Knitter, whose work I greatly admire, that my buddy the Petite Knitter uses, apparently in her patterns. It can't hurt. And also, I'm looking for a bulky weight pattern to use the way I've been using the brick as a template. Now, I was using the Agnes sweater, but I don't quite like it as much as I could. I just have not gotten quite the results from it I wanted, and I probably could adjust it and work that way, but I'm just going to give another sweater a try. And I've admired the patterns of the Petite Knitter for quite a while. I like the way she works in basically brown and white, sometimes black or gray and white, like very chromatic. That's not my style. I am a color junkie, but as you can see in this sweater, not for this one. I am looking at a collar in the multicolored purples and browns that I have hand spun. That is, a single skein has those colors. So I'm thinking about this a great deal, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So to make a long story even longer, I sat down last night and I really kicked it off by doing the folded collar. I have done folded brims before on hats, and I really like what you get. It takes a certain amount of patience and cunning, and I used a very helpful YouTube from Biscotti Yarns, and I put the link to it in the show notes. I should say it's not a YouTube, I believe it's on their regular site. But there were quite a few of these around, and this is the one that was the most clear to me. So the link is in the show notes above the pictures for the Romuald 23. I do want to tell you that that folded neckline came out just smashing, and I really enjoyed it. It's 3.5 inches of 1x1 rib on size US 10s, which are, I believe, 6mm needles. So I'm waiting. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to get the needles. Amazon was a little foggy whether it be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. In the meantime, while looking through my hand spun, I found this enormous amount of hand spun green type silk. One was labeled clearly as being from a blend from Be Mice Elf. She doesn't do any more dyeing, so she's kind of out of the range. But anyway, I want to give her name a lot of credit because I enjoyed working with her stuff back in the day. So I spun this silk blend from her, and you can see it in the first picture under the Vineyard cowl. And then I found I had another big ball of what looks like a mix of 2 silks, the leftover from hers, like a single ply, and I plied it against another silk, which I can't identify, did not make good notes in my stash in Ravelry. At any rate, so I'm using my little Diaz and Dog hook, and I am indeed doing yet another Abbess cowl using these green silks. It's a lot slower going. I did finally get through the first ball, and I'm on to the second ball, which is the mix of silks, the Be Myself with something else. And I'm enjoying it immensely. It's coming out in these beautiful variegated greens with purple and lavender shot through. And there's absolutely a straight stripe of dark lavender purple in the middle of what I've got so far. So I'm just loving the heck out of this. It's going to be a long, slow project, but it's a silk cowl. Who is complaining? And again, this is the Abbess Sock Yarn cowl that I've gone crazy over, as you're about to find out, because, yes, I still have the original 4 that I made. And I am still working on 3 of those 4. They're not in the show notes anymore because I called them all done and then said, no, they're not. So here's what the story is. Cowl number 1, I really liked, but it was a little tight. This was the pattern's chain of 177 stitches. And I thought, surely that will stretch, but I have never gotten to a place where I've stuck it into water and blocked it. All right. So I had cowl number 1. And then I had cowl number 2. Cowl number 2, I believe I chained, no, the original was 167. And cowl number 2, I chained 177. And I really like it, and it's sitting next to me, folded on top of one of my yarn bins, because this is the one I've been wearing all day long. I really like cowl number 2. Goes with everything I own because it's got every color of the rainbow in it. Perfect size, everything works. So, never being one to be discouraged, I went on to cowl number 3, which you may remember came out too tight last week. And so I stopped it when it was very short, maybe 2 inches from top to bottom. I stopped it. And I began to use it quite off the cuff as my bedtime cowl, that when I get cold at night, I used to wrap a shawl around my neck and then realized a good long loop, double looped cowl would work even better. Now last year I used a single loop cowl, one that fit close, and I didn't like the way it began to stretch until it wasn't keeping me warm. All right, so bring in cowl number 3, the one that's too short from top to bottom. Doubled, that was just perfect. So I wore that for a few nights. It's been cold here. Well, son of my gun, it is now stretched beautifully, and so it's back on my table here. And I am adding to it because I like it in the more stretched version. So, meanwhile, cowl number 1, I said, well, if that worked, and so I put cowl number 1 on and said, yeah, this would make a great nighttime cowl. And it'll probably stretch a bit too. So this is really good. So now cowl number 1 is in the bedroom as my nighttime cowl. Cowl number 2 is sitting next to me because I've just been wearing it out of the house all the time to keep the breezes off my neck. Cowl number 3 and cowl number 4 are both sitting on my desk. Cowl number 3 has caught up to cowl number 4. They're both, I don't know, I'm looking at them now, maybe 3.5 inches from top to bottom. And I'm still going with them because I have a ton of sock yarn on my table. Why, you ask? And yeah, there's going to be a cowl number 5. So what's going on here? Well, first off, I'm looking at amounts of sock yarn that will not be enough for me to use in my scrappy socks configuration, that I don't think, in other words, I can get 10 rows per sock for 2 socks off what I have on my desk. So I've just got it piled on my desk and I'm putting it into these scrappy cowls. But Gemma, what will happen to them? Well, it is that time of year. I need to weed through my boxes again, and I need to go through and find the things that I want to give to charity, because I have a ton of cowls and scarves and whatnot. A few have real emotional associations, like the ones that have animals from my herd, their fur spun into them in some form. But most of them can go. Most of them, I have worn them, I have enjoyed them, and we have a shelter for families fleeing domestic violence down in Santa Clarita. So they will be getting a few of them. And I have a few hats that can do that too, although I have to say, and you should consider this, some of these cowls will go into the bin by the front door. The bin by the front door holds random hats and these kind of double loop cowls, because we all lose hats and stuff when we go out into the great beyond. And so I keep them by the front door when I make them, and anybody can take them and just use them and wear them when their head is cold. And if they get lost, they get lost. But that's what I've been doing with a lot of my hats and my scarves and cowls, putting them in that bin, and fingerless mitts. And I think, I'm looking at these fingering weight yarns and thinking a lot of them should go to fingerless mitts, or even better yet, I may start knitting fingertips on. I saw somebody do this on Instagram, and they just have started adding fingers to their fingerless gloves. That is, taking old fingerless gloves and adding fingers for my glove pattern, and I'm thinking, I should take this more seriously. At any rate, so those are all the plans. But these things are like popcorn. I'm just having a great time crocheting them up, sitting at my desk. When I have a minute or two, I just do a round or part of a round and I keep the little safety pin type clips on my desk. And these are basically stitch markers for crochet, and I keep them on my desk, and I will just stick them through the loop when I have to stop before finishing a round. So yeah, it's true. I'm looking at, if you count the silk in greens, I'm looking at 4 of these things as I sit here at my desk. Number 5 is in my bedroom in the pouch next to my bed, waiting to be worn tonight because it's freezing here. So I just can't resist these things, you should know. Meanwhile, no spinning this week, so I think I'm just going to move on to a strategy. And my strategy is really about giving thanks, but giving thanks in a different sense. And that is that Thanksgiving is always this looking backwards if you're American. We're looking back to this time when basically a bunch of Native Americans saved the lives of a bunch of colonists who really just hadn't had a good year trying to move to what they saw as the New World. And it's a really important thing, and I think we tend to bury it under various American myths of really American white person myths. But at the core, it really is this wonderful thing about the indigenous people saving lives, being humane. And I don't know how we buried all that under this mythology of the greatness of the white people in the story. I'm really kind of mystified. Because if you go wandering back through American history, you will find indigenous people saving white people all over the place. Not necessarily always white people either, I might add. That, in other words, our history has this record of the indigenous people helping out these people who heaven only knows how they looked at them, that just showed up in their territory and decided they should stay. And I think part of the reason that's possible is not all the indigenous groups had a concept of their territory. They simply saw the land as not being ownable, not being able to be owned. And, well, thereby hangs a rather tragic tale, doesn't it? But the interesting thing is these are stories of starting over, that you have the locals who understand the rhythms of their world and their land giving the new people a chance to start over, that their own attempt to start over had failed, and they need the locals to help them. And I was thinking about that and thinking about how it really is a time of refreshing. It's a time when you can get started over. And of course, all the festivals of light, the solstice in December, are about this, are about the return of the light, this starting over of the year, of the daylight. So, while we're giving thanks, I think the strategy here is giving. Not just thanks, but giving. Start over. Pay it forward. If you have been helped, now is a great time to help other people. The interesting thing about that is that it is refreshing to do this. And that's another part of it. I was thinking of Diwali. I had seen a really, really nice video a year or two ago about Diwali and about what it means if you are from India, how you handle Diwali. And of course you go home, and a major part of Diwali, if I understand it correctly, speaking as a total outsider, so if you are Hindu or Indian, forgive me for this if I'm inaccurate, but the major part is you refresh everything, that you clean out your whole house, that there's a sense not only of bringing the light back, but of getting rid of the non-helpful, the old, the dirty, and starting again with this refreshment. And so, part of that is that you are giving, that you are feasting, that you are open to the celebration with your neighbors, and that you go home if you are part of a family and you rejoin your family. So you return, but you also refresh and you start over. So sitting here, a whopping, 72 hours after the American Thanksgiving, I'd like to sort of point out, let's get on to the giving. Let's get on to the giving season of the year. And let's remember that it goes beyond simply giving to our families. And also, if you're in America, it goes beyond giving to big corporations who set phony prices and are reaping incredible corporate wealth while they're claiming they can't give us these low prices the rest of the year. Yeah, har, 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 sure. And that means let's give to the small independent makers who are putting craft and skill into what they make. And let's refresh our world. Let's start over in this season as the darkness grows. Let's clean out all the dirt and let's sort of start over a little bit with a moment of thankfulness and a chance to renew and to get it right. Like those settlers back in that first American Thanksgiving. You screwed it up. You can sort of wash that away. You can start over. You can make new friends. You can refresh your world. And this time, you can get it right. And if you're going to get it right, that means giving, being grateful, and helping the people around you. So let's start off right there. There's a lot of New Year's at this time of year, by the way. And I think in the Western calendar, the first one is probably Halloween. It's probably the Wiccan or Celtic New Year right there. But it's an interesting time of the year because this is emphasis of going into the darkness and trying to sort of clean things up. Anyway, not much of a strategy, but let's give thanks. Let's start over. Let's give and let's refresh. Fluffy books, not a thing. I'm just listening to books on Audible. I was listening to the latest Enola Holmes. It's good, but I have to say the original Enola Holmes books where she's on the run from Sherlock and Mycroft, those were the best. Now they're sort of, girl mysteries, sort of steampunk, but I really miss those original ones. And I will say the Netflix Enola Holmes, they're good in their own right, but they are not the books. We've heard that before. Something I really like, okay, having said all that, it's true. I love this time of year. I love Black Friday because I love restocking and I love shopping around and shopping small. So I have spent the weekend buying things frantically. It's true. I believe I'm done my Christmas shopping. I have sent the things off to the people afar whom I love. And I have pretty much bought for the boys. And I have stocking stuffers already in their stockings. And I had this real great moment of revelation. I heard a clanking and I realized my son was going through his stocking already and I had 2 gifts in it. And I started to snap at him and then I stopped myself and said, he's 17. If he wants to ruin the surprise, he can do it. That I suddenly realized I can't police my 17-year-old over something as stupid as control your impulses and don't go in that Christmas stocking. If you want to go in it, go in it. And I realized when I did that, I felt a lot better. So, yes, also 2 of the gifts I've bought this year, both my husband and son, they're going to be pretty clear on what they are. You can't hide them because they're giant. And so those are coming. And this Thursday, I do believe Amazon may have to bring a dump truck for all the stuff that's supposed to arrive this Thursday. I want to say how much I blame Amazon for that because they said, oh no, don't use our free Prime shipping, which will get it there to you the day after tomorrow. They said, your day for Amazon shipping is Thursdays. Now, let's be fair. I have Amazon Prime. I have had it for many years. I like it for many, many reasons, and it means I get everything shipped usually like 24 hours later. It arrives here in consumer paradise, that is Southern California. If you're out in the middle of Arkansas somewhere, probably you're not getting this kind of service from Amazon. But we are. We even have a warehouse 20 minutes up the road now. Okay. But for some reason, I realized that if I let them ship everything to me within 24 hours, I'm going to be confused. Like, this can come in 24 hours, but this other thing you're ordering at the same time can't. So this will come Monday, but this will come Tuesday or Wednesday, but this may come Thursday. No. I said, all right, everything's coming on Thursday. And I finished ordering yesterday, Saturday. What this means, they better bring a dump truck on Thursday is all I'm saying, because I have a huge amount of stuff. But that hopefully is most of the end. I have to say, too, Old Navy, thank you very much, retail store. They do great sales at this time of year. So at this time of year, my son gets all his new pants, all his new socks, all his new underwear. Both the boys get new socks and underwear, to be brutally honest. And yeah, it's true. I looked at my long sleeve shirts and said they've shrunk beyond recognition. They need to be passed along. So I did go to the sale at LL Bean and bought some cotton turtlenecks, tunic length, because now they make them shorter than they used to, and they call the normal length a tunic, which annoys the heck out of me. But anyway, so it's been restocking time around here, and I just really like this time of year for that. Speaking of strategies, I want to point out that I saved for this. So I'm ripping through one of my online bank accounts to pay for all of this. All right, let's put a lid on it. Well, the tea tastings. I have a lovely one again. This is called Hammock, like the thing you swing in the summer. Hammock Orange Cream Black. This is good stuff. Again, this is very reminiscent of the flavor I did last week. I have to be honest, and I don't care. Either one of them is great. This is much simpler. It's black tea, orange peel, and some natural cream flavor. Very, very straightforward. It doesn't have quite the scent of like the Lady Grey or the tea that we tried last week, but it's got a pleasant enough scent. But the flavor is delightful. I think it was Jag Warrior who was saying that she keeps this in her regular routine of black tea. I can see why. Oh yes, last week was the black mango tea. And this is very reminiscent of that. Doesn't have the strong mango flavor, but again, this is another one that you don't really need to put milk in, but it does take a sweetener to bring out that orange cream flavor. But I really do recommend Plum Deluxe Hammock Orange Cream Black. Meanwhile, it's Thanksgiving, and I could tell you boring recipes for turkey, but you can get that out of any reasonable cookbook. Instead, I'm going to talk about the family delight every year. My husband is crazy over this. I introduced it to him years ago when I came back from the UK, and that is, of course, shepherd's pie. Now, I am sure that if you went into a pub in England and you ordered this, you might not recognize it if you've ever had mine. That the spirit is the same, but I doubt the ingredients are quite the same. But I sort of go to the spirit. And the spirit of shepherd's pie is you take your leftovers and make a pie. Now, you can make a pie crust, sure. But why when you have a ton of stuffing or mashed potatoes or both? So let me tell you the basic shepherd's pie for me. You take a pie tin and then you press a crust into it. And the crust could be a crust. You could make a bread crust if you want. By the way, if you're going to make a bread crust, add beer to it instead of water. It gives it a much heartier flavor. Stale beer is the best. And by the way, if you're making that kind of crust, may I suggest you try a herring pie, but that's another story. At any rate, you could do that. But I always take mashed potatoes and or stuffing. Now this year, my husband made a ton of stuffing. We used keto croutons from my favorite company, which is Fox Hill Farms out in Vermont. And I just bought on sale. They had croutons and crisps. They screwed up my order and gave me nothing but croutons. No problem there, let me tell you. So my husband stuffed the turkey with the croutons with also a fresh organic pork sausage and whatever else he used. We have insanely good stuffing in the turkey this year, let me put it that way. And we have a ton of it left over. And so that is my crust. I just simply patted it into place. Now, it was a little dry. Don't worry about that. You just pat it into place and make yourself a crust. Then in the crust, you're going to put your leftovers. So in this case, we had, of course, shredded turkey. And you can see I had some broccoli that I chopped up a little bit. And we had some sweet potato, which I can have a little in terms of keto. And then you're going to take your gravy. And the gravy, of course, had kind of solidified. And so that was great. I put lumps of gravy all over it. And while I was heating up the oven, and I cook at 350 American, I'll come back to that. So while the oven was heating up, I just put lumps of gravy on the top of all this and just put it in the oven for a minute or two, and the gravy just melted. Then I had made bone broth, as I always do, from the turkey carcass. We had a lot of carcass. We had a 15-pound turkey. So we have turkey meat everywhere in bins in the fridge. And that's probably going to get vacuum sealed because we still have so much of it and put in the freezer. But anyway, I took the bone broth that I made from that. Now, when I make bone broth, usually I just do it in the Instant Pot. This time we had so much bone and so much stuff to put in. I actually used the Instant Pot and I used my ancient slow cooker. And that was great because the Instant Pot, you just do it for an hour and let it cool overnight. The slow cooker, I put it on high for half an hour and then put it on low and left it all night to cook. So the next morning I had cold broth in the Instant Pot, and I just, ran that through a strainer and was able to put that in the freezer. And then I strained the still hot broth in the slow cooker and let that cool all afternoon, and then put that in the freezer. So we are loaded down with bone broth, which is good because I kept a little back for the refrigerator. And when I made this, the last thing you put in this is bone broth. And that's because it's going to dry out in the oven. And so you're going to put the bone broth in there, just fill it right up to the brim of the pie tin, because that's going to evaporate off and it's going to intensify the turkey flavor. Okay, having done all that, then I took a very strong cheddar and I shredded it by hand with a grater, because I rock and roll that way. And I sprinkled it liberally over the top, and then I covered all of this with tin foil, and I put it in the oven at 350 Fahrenheit. And sorry, I'm not going to do the conversion here. Okay, I got guilty. It's 175 British or European, Celsius, centigrade, whatever. All right. But anyway, I put that in the oven. That takes about half an hour. And this is really nice because under that foil, the cheese is melting and the broth is kind of boiling off and steaming and condensing back. And remember, if your crust or your potatoes, and you can use, by the way, for your crust, you can use like crust, you can use your stuffing, you can use mashed potatoes, you can use sweet potatoes, whatever you want. Remember, that was all dried out. Well, it's not dried out anymore. And so you get this luscious, very moist pie. There is a picture of our first one after we kind of rove through it and ate a lot of it. And that one I finally finished today on Sunday. I've been eating that, reheating it over and over again. The house has been cold, so it's been nice to have that oven on to make this. So this has been simply delightful. Now let me tell you one thing about shepherd's pie. It only gets better day by day. But you do have to remember, every time you put it back in the oven, add some more broth so that it doesn't dry out. You don't want it dried out. It's kind of awful that way. Meanwhile, you can also see that we had extra salmon, and our salmon box is coming probably tomorrow. So is our organic meats box. So I really needed to go through some salmon. So yeah, I made more of the salmon mousse. And there is a picture of it sitting in the blender with one of my homemade rolls using the mix from Fox Hill Farms in it. This mousse has two lives. The first life is when you first cook it and blend it. When it's hot, it is insanely good as sort of a dip for whatever you like to dip. And then when it is cooled off, it's basically a cream cheese spread on your bagel or bread or toast. So I just want to say there's some more of that with some of my homemade iced tea. I do believe that is a Tranquil Peach Herbal in the iced tea mug there. But a fantastic week for food, as you can tell. On to the blather. Well, you've gotten a lot of it. There is a picture of our Thanksgiving table with food. Food's almost in the background, the dishware's in the foreground. There is our family selfie, our Thanksgiving selfie. I look like I've got my finger in an electric socket. Everybody else looks great. I don't have my finger in an electric socket. It's probably my toe. But anyway, there we are with the garage door in the background for some reason, smiling into the camera. And we just had a very peaceful, wonderful Thanksgiving. My husband is the founder of the feast. He is the one who does all the cooking. He has always insisted on that. I can remember the first few years of our marriage when I used to fight him for this privilege. And we'd both get in the kitchen and growl at each other all day until I basically realized I'm a fool and I should let him do this. He does a stellar job. The turkey was, all 15 pounds, was cooked perfectly. He basted it religiously. The skin was a work of art of crispy goodness, and the turkey was very, very moist. He just did a fabulous job. Oh my gosh, there was keto stuffing, there was sweet potatoes, which I didn't indulge in until we got down to the shepherd's pie level. There was broccoli. Oh, I know, I'm forgetting about half of this. There was gravy. The gravy was insanely good. There was mashed potatoes for my son. I can't even remember. Oh, there was delicata squash, kind of like a butternut squash. Flavor is, as the name would suggest, a little more gentle than a butternut squash flavor. Oh, it was such a good dinner, and we just ate ourselves helpless. And then I had made the pumpkin spice earthquake cake. Really, I made it last Sunday night, knowing we would snack on it going into the weekend. And he made an insanely good pumpkin pie. And then I made brownies yesterday. So we're just eating our way through desserts. And of course, he whipped a lot of the heavy cream that I love. But I also like to just pour heavy cream unwhipped like a Brit over my stuff. So it was an A+++ Thanksgiving. We just had a lovely, peaceful day. He, being my husband, was very concerned that I rest. I kind of blew into Thanksgiving exhausted from my patients. The holidays are coming, and a few of them are heating up, as you can imagine. That sense of I'm not getting what I should get or what everybody deserves for the holidays is setting in. Although I have to say, I also found out I'm losing two of my most contentious patients in the next few weeks. And that's something, heaven help them, but it's something to be grateful for. They're moving on in their lives and moving away, and that's a relief. So it has been a lot to give thanks for, because pressure off me at work, and at the same time, we're just incredibly content right now. Things are working very well. No, our lives aren't perfect, but the three of us have each other, and it's a very nice and happy time in our world as things are going. We're missing a lot of old friends, including our animals who have gone on, but it's fun. We had Queenie in the house a lot this week, trying to get her more acclimated, and she's calming down. Queenie is always going to be a high energy person, but she's smart and she's loving. And I'm skipping onto that part, talking about the pup date, but that's all that we really had. We had some house practice. Queenie likes to run into the house and dash into my study and grab something and carry it out. And if you don't yell and scream, she'll usually just bring it to me and drop it, and it's usually yarn. But, sometimes she just runs in there. I think she's just hell-raising randomly. Minerva likes to do that. Minerva likes to hell raise. She likes to come in the study and knock things around when I'm not giving her proper attention. So, meanwhile, I also went stash roaming, as you can probably tell from what's on my hooks and needles. And I started looking around to find the stash for my Romuald sweater. And in the midst of this, I found a lot of lace weight, which caught me off guard. You can see two skeins of a simply beautiful lace weight that I believe I bought a few years ago from the Yarniver truck. I know Meredith recognized it when I posted it on Instagram. So you can see two of the pretty skeins, which I basically just put in a Ziploc bag and put into the cardboard box of Doomy Doom Doom. The poor cardboard box of Doomy Doom Doom has refilled. I thought it was empty, but no. It's got the Gigi sweater, it's got the Lisa Souza sweater, and it's got the socks I'm working on, and all sorts of little odds and ends, including my vestuary vest, which will be coming up in a few months. It's become the cardboard box of sweater Doomy Doom Doom, I guess, except all of the yarn for my Romuald. Oh no, it's in there too. Plus, I got 3 sweaters worth in there. Plus, I'm still working on the Superstition sweater. I did get one sleeve down to the elbow this weekend. Oh, the best laid plans of mice and men. I had meant to finish those sleeves this weekend, but as you can see, got caught up in everything else. The hub state, well, like I said, he made a terrific dinner for us, and the beloved son was home all week, so you can see a picture of him. I saw a gingerbread house construction kit. I saw several at our local market, but one of them was with Tootsie Rolls. So I opted for the chocolate-laden version, and you can see my son with it. I have to tell you, that's a picture right after he finished it. It's looking very sad. It looks like mice got at it. No, they didn't. My son has been nibbling away at bits of it before it gets ridiculously hard, and hoping we wouldn't notice, so we may have to find him another gingerbread house. Meanwhile, Project Cookbook got some recipes now for the brownies and the salmon fluff added, so that is going forward. No work on Project Tea. And Green Fingers, my garden is just dreaming, and I am mulching with tea leaves. On the calendar, well, today was the end of Thanksgiving. Next up in 3 weeks, the Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference in Anaheim, California. That is at the Anaheim Convention Center, right next to Disneyland. I will certainly be there in the flesh from December 14th through the 17th. I paid for the whole thing, but I think I'm going to miss the law and ethics, which may be a bit of a challenge to make up. Nevertheless, I will be there for those days. If you want to meet me for dinner, please let me know. The only risk, there are some evening sessions. I may be running back, but I would love to meet up with anyone for dinner or for tea. Rome Mule, of course, I have off. That is December 23rd through January 1st. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. And past the ammunition, I'm finally getting into time off. And I have to tell you, I really needed these 4 days. Meanwhile, Yarnopoly and the Second Saturday Stitchers are two groups in the Santa Clarita Valley. Apparently, Loretta hits Yarnopoly every now and then. Our own Loretta 1031. They both meet usually on the second Saturday of each month. Yarnopoly is at a Starbucks on Newhall Ranch in Bouquet Canyon. I'm not sure where Second Saturday is meeting up these days, but they have Facebook groups. If you're in this area, you can certainly join up with them. They also are very crochet friendly. In fact, more of them crochet than knit, which I find really interesting. And last but never least, CFR 10 will be at the Courtyard by Marriott. I have heard back from them. They're saying the date is clear. We're negotiating for terms, and it will be September 28th, 2024. I think the biggest difference this year is I will be taking September 27th off so that I don't have to go thundering in there late Friday evening when I'm exhausted and fogged up mentally. I think I need a little time to bring myself to myself before I go back to a CFR, and I do believe that's how I used to do it. Meanwhile, Minerva gets the last word, and there she is. I slept late Thursday morning, and then I was going to go back to bed while my husband cooked. I was that tired, except, well, you can see someone got there before me. And so Minerva parked herself on my flannel sheets in my lovely room, and she is just happy there. The heat, of course, the weather got cold. We had windstorms. The heater is not turning on. I actually think it is. I think the fan's not turning on, so we have to get that fixed. But the days are in the 50s and 60s. The nights are in the 30s and 40s. We have a lot of space heaters, so we are just fine. But in the meantime, Minerva is no fool. She has had 4 halcyon days off with me. She's been extremely happy about that. She's also been hanging out on the flannel sheet in the room with the space heater. So Minerva would tell you it's been a great 4 days off, and hang around your space heater. Having said all of this, I guess there's nothing left to say except, once again, I greatly appreciate you all. I want to thank you for listening and supporting the podcast. And in the meantime, everybody, get all your shots, take care of your health. Remember, when you take care of other people, because we live in community, you are taking care of yourself. But also get those shots for flu and whatever, because when you take care of yourself, you're taking care of your community. Meanwhile, stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.